Welcome to the Flower Prophecies, a podcast exploring all things flower essences and remedies and flower therapy, and how this vibrational plant medicine has the potential to heal and shift our individual and collective health and consciousness. We'll be diving deep into the specifics of individual essences, nature's energetics, emotional healing and growth, as well as hearing client case studies, hosting special guests and professionals, and I'll be sharing my own personal explorations and philosophies channeled straight from the flowers. Through my own unearthing, I have discovered what I believe to be the most profound teaching of the flowers, and I now wish to share with you the practice of alchemizing fear into beauty. Our guest today, Asia Suler, has been recently affected by Hurricane Helene, which has wiped out her apothecary and practice and her entire town in North Carolina. If you would like to donate to the relief fund that Asia has set up, you can head to asiasuler.com. All funds will be donated to keeping Asia and her team afloat through this disaster and the devastating loss that they are going through, and any surplus funds will be allocated to rebuilding and supporting her town throughout this time. If you do not have the means to donate to this fund, please do send healing love and prayers to Asia and her town and all that have been affected by this devastating hurricane. Welcome back to the Flower Prophecies. This week we have a very exciting guest on. Asia Suler is a writer, a teacher, a herbalist, and an earth intuitive. She has written a best-selling book, Mirrors in the Earth, created a host of online courses to connect other highly sensitives with nature, and has an online flower essence apothecary. Trained in many areas, including herbalism and Reiki, and under many renowned teachers and guides, Asia has taught over 20,000 individuals the magic that is co-creating with nature. Welcome to the Flower Prophecies, Asia.
What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Abby.
So excited to have you here and on the show. And I firstly wanted to ask a bit of a selfish question.
Sure, go for it.
You have your archetypes quiz on your website, and it goes through. Anyone can sort of do the quiz and find what archetype they are. I was the old growth tree on your quiz. I did a while ago. Can you tell me a little bit about this? And also, I'd love to know what your archetype is.
Mm-hmm. So the earth healing archetypes came out of just my years of working with clients and students and seeing that there tends to be sort of these 5 archetypes that come up again and again that I see as really helpful for people in understanding why they're here, what kind of medicine they're meant to bring to this world, what that delivery system looks like. And so that archetype will really help you to understand how your energy system works and sort of the methods through which your gifts enter into this world. And so the 5 archetypes also loosely correspond to the 5 spirits in Chinese medicine. So that's a cool overlay. And what was really interesting is when I first created the 5 archetypes, I then realized afterwards, these perfectly align with this very ancient understanding of these 5 spirits, which we all have within us, with all archetypical understanding, right? We all have all the archetypes within us. And yet, especially, throughout our lives, we tend to embody really one versus another. And so this quiz is to help you to understand that. So the old growth tree archetype, which I know very well because I am an old growth tree, is very much this archetype of someone who is a bridge between the realms, has their feet firmly planted on the earth, really is able to kind of do the earthly things to translate the visions or the ideas, but they're here to be a bridge. So they're here to sort of bring in and help people attune to this information from the hidden world. There's a strong resonance with study and research and libraries, just sort of that like scholarly vibe, but this ability to sort of bridge the beyond and the earthly realm to help people really like tune into sort of knowledge systems that will help them flourish on their path. So that's like just a very short description of the old growth tree archetype. But I'm so happy to know another old growth tree.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And that sounds very resonant to who I am. So
awesome.
So you have been working in this field for quite a while now and have taught, like I said, a large amount of students. I'd love to know what some of the standout lessons that you have come to you through this process and sharing the work with so many individuals.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's so much, I think just, there's a really interesting aspect of like this path of being called to teach. And it's like one of my greatest passions, teaching. I absolutely love it. And a big part of why I love it is that when I teach, to me, it's like a form of channeling. Like when I teach, I connect into, whatever sources of wisdom that I'm able to plug into my wider self, this wider knowing, the soul of the earth. It's like I feel my best when I'm teaching, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, things come out of my mouth and I'm like, cool, I needed that, So for me, teaching is like how I channel. I think everyone channels in different ways. I believe absolutely everybody is a channel. That's like part of the human condition, is that we're here to like be channels for this wider knowing, this wider wisdom, for this wider light. And so that comes through differently for everyone. And for me, teaching is a big part of it. And teaching for me is almost like, it kind of puts me through like a graduate program. Like I tend to teach things that, well, I like get an idea to teach something and I realize that I'm like, oh, that's what I've been working through for a while. And so by the time I teach something, it's almost like that's my like master's thesis on whatever I've just been figuring out in my own life, so it's like this thing that kind of keeps me, on track with my own growth. And I see this with people who are called to teach, or called to share in a way that's guiding or teaching in any capacity, that it will often push people, further along in their path, because in order to like teach, you need to know it. And so I'll set myself goals too, of like, I want to teach this kind of class, whether it's 10 years down the line or 1 year down the line, because I want to learn that thing, So I think there's sometimes like a misnomer of people think, oh, if you're a teacher, like you're a master, but really like teaching is deciding to like put yourself through this program of learning what mastery even could possibly be, like getting a glimpse of it. And it's just been like such an incredible way to connect with people. And I think one of my favorite things about teaching and being in the field with other people is the ability to really see that so much of my job really is just reflecting back to people who they already are, and where they're already at and what they already know. And so it's like, I feel like I'm a teacher for teachers. Like I'm here to help teachers see that they're teachers, whether they're like leading a class or they're just leading by living their lives. So that's just been such a special thing, because when you put yourself out there in that way to guide and to teach, you just end up calling in people that I really believe are like your soul group. It's like, these are the people you're meant to be interacting with in this lifetime. And so it's just like a really powerful experience, really, to like have the vulnerability to put it out there and then realize that the people are coming forward are the people that you so dearly want to be connected with in this lifetime.
I love that so much. I feel very similar in the sense of like, the way that I work is like, and I guess I wouldn't call myself a teacher in any capacity yet, but in past careers, and I have been in the space of a teacher as well, and I do the same thing. I want to teach this, and so then I go and learn it so that I can teach it, and it's like exactly how I function too. I love that. Beautiful. Yeah. So, and just touching on, the reflections or reflecting back to others, what is within them. I think, yeah, that's what we're all here to do, right? And I think, that's like you say, that's why people are put on our path so that they have that clear reflection to them and they can see themselves so clearly. And yeah, I think that's just such a huge part of the healing experience is surrounding yourself with people that reflect back to you exactly your truth. So I love that so
Yeah.
much. I wanted to ask you, so you have a lot of courses and offerings covering, connecting to the earth and plant medicine, and a lot in those realms. But you also have a course called the Pussy Portal and multi-dimensional vaginal healing. I want to know what these are about and what the catalyst for creating these was.
Yeah. So my whole entry into my life path, really, into this world of alternative healing and connecting with nature and the unseen world, came through chronic health issues. And um, sort of the kickoff of what was many years of chronic health issues was issues in the root of my body. So for me, that looked like chronic yeast infections and also a chronic pain condition called vulvodynia that affects the muscles and nerves of your vulva. And it was such a painful and hard time in my life. I often say that like the world inside my body was so painful, I had to go outside. And that's like when I started connecting to nature, when I started sitting with the trees and sitting with the creek and just seeing that healing was possible. I'd watch like a tree fall down in the forest and it would just seem like the end of the world. And then in the spring, there'd be flowers I never saw before because they finally had the space and the light to grow. And so, at the time I was told that there'd be no recourse for healing, that the only potential for healing for me was to remove nerve endings from that area of my body. And yeah, something inside of me said, there's another way. And so I really just, embarked, left sort of the Western medical model because it was failing me, which happens to so many people who end up in this realm of alternative, quote unquote, healing, is we're just failed by the Western medical model. And we're like, there has to be more, like this can't just be it. And yeah, I ended up going through a really profound experience of healing. And on the other side of it, I always knew like I wanted to teach a class or I wanted to offer something around the specific kind of energetic components of having something literally come up in the root of your body, like in this such a primal, sensitive, ancestral place of our body, like this place that is literally like the root of our creation. Like this is like where we come from, it's the root of our creative energy, obviously our sexual energy. There's so much here. And, when I was moving through vulvodynia, this was like pre-social media and there's so few resources out there. Nobody was talking about it. And, and even just like me having the courage to just be like my vagina hurts all the time. Like, let's talk about it. Like, it was like shocking to people. And I remember thinking like, how in the world are people ever going to heal if nobody is going to talk about it? So it was really an important like soul project and passion project for me to bring forward first multidimensional vaginal healing and then the pussy portal, which is sort of the multidimensional vaginal healing is sort of this entryway into understanding that oftentimes when there's imbalances happening in this area of our body, they don't heal with just one prescription or prescriptive measure because they're multidimensional in nature, that there's so much that we hold and that is being transformed here that we need to approach it from a multidimensional lens. And then the Pussy Portal's a more expanded library of resources to work with, different states, different conditions. And what I found and what the Pussy Portal is divided into is that there's sort of 4 categories of relationships that often need to be healed when we have especially recurrent health issues happening in the root of our body. And those are our relationship to ourself, our relationship to others, our relationship to our ancestors, and our relationship to the earth. And so there's resources within each one of those categories to sort of help you understand, like, what are the specific threads if you're someone who is dealing with like vaginal health issues, uterine health issues, what are the specific threads that are woven into the multidimensionality of what I'm experiencing? And, I was able to heal from that experience in a way that I never thought possible. And so, it's been a huge part of my life path. And I will continue to talk about it because I think, anything that's shrouded in silence is only shrouded in silence because it's so powerful. And this is, I think, a big part of like the power that's rising right now to be healed.
Beautiful and amazing. Good on you for sharing this work and for getting it out of the silence. And I think many people that move into alternative healing or healing themselves and sharing their gifts do come from these experiences. And like you say, the more silenced they are, the more powerful they are. And I can just, it's just a real testament to like your pain was held in such an area that was so silenced that it's like you can now see the power that has come from that, right? The transformation that has been birthed out of that. So cool. Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, one thing I like to say and remind people of is like the area of your body or your life that you struggle with the most, you often think is your weak spot. It's actually the opposite. It's like that is where some of your greatest power and talent and innate gifts lie. And the reason why there is issues manifesting there is because like your wider spirit and the wider soul of this earth like will not allow you to live your whole life without tapping into it.
Yes, absolutely. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So let's get to the flowers. I would love to hear your first experiences in learning and working with flower essences.
So when I graduated from college, I moved to New York City and never thought I'd live in New York City. I graduated and was like, I want to, move out to the country. I ended up in New York City for a variety of reasons, including just, my partner at the time, friend network, and got like the only job I could find taking care of plants, which was a plant technician, which means that I watered plants in office buildings in like Times Square and like the financial district, like Rockefeller Center. So I was like that person walking around with a watering can from room to room. But I just knew that I wanted to work with plants. Like after this whole experience I had moved through in my late teens and early 20s, I knew that this was my path. And my mom actually gave me a book about flower essences. It was about the Bach flower remedies. And because she knew I was interested in plants, and my mom is a psychotherapist specializing in EMDR therapy, and one of her clients had given it to her. And she thought, oh, Asia might be interested in this. It's about plants. And I remember reading it. I have such a vivid memory of starting to read it, just reading the introduction, and just tears started just like streaming down my face. And they're what I call truth tears. Like when you just cry because something is just so true and it's so true on some level, it's like really emotional. And so I remember just crying as I read, this passage about flower essences. And from then on, I was like, this is a big part of what I want to work with. And, I ended up deciding to go to herbal school to study Western herbalism, to study, sort of the disease process and the actual constituents of plants and medicine making, but like even as I went this more sort of like physical route with working with the plants, like the flower essence, the energetics was always my heart. Like that was always what I was most passionate about. And I remember the first flower essence I ever bought. It was a Star of Bethlehem flower essence. And I basically used the book like a divination deck. Like I just was like, okay, I've read this book. I've read each one. They're all amazing. I don't know which one to pick. And I remember just opening it up to Star of Bethlehem and being like, no, that can't be me. I was like, shock, trauma. Like I don't have shock or trauma, I know a lot better now. But I remember being like, okay, I'll just go get it from the store because that's what came up. And so I went and I got it from this little store. And I remember the moment I walked out of the building, I started crying. And I was like, what is happening right now? I'm like in the parking lot of this grocery store and I am just weeping. I don't understand what's happening, And I remember starting to take it. And, the thing that I love about flower essences is it's like, nothing changes and everything changes. It's like the most amazing thing where you're like, literally nothing has changed in my life, but somehow like everything has changed. Like my whole interaction with my existence is now different than it was 2 weeks ago. And it was really like the thing that I needed. And I think because we so often see trauma with like a capital T, if you don't feel like you're in the midst of processing some sort of trauma with a capital T, you're like, well, I don't have stuff, I don't have shock or trauma in my system, but like we're really all moving through different layers all the time, right? Of like releasing layers of trauma and shock. And for me, like I needed that first flower essence in order to open up to starting to work with the other ones. It was like, that's where I needed to begin. And then once I had that experience, I was like, oh, I'm 100% in. Like these speak to me. They work with me. I resonate with them so profoundly. And then it was like being a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah, I feel that. That's so funny. I just listening to your story is like I also got my flower essence book from my mum before I started working with them. But I grew up using them, but without consciously knowing, about them. But I also, got my book from my mum and started reading it and was just like the same, like, no way. Like, and I just knew, so it's like, I love hearing that.
That's beautiful.
And again, same thing. I also like just randomly chose, when I was consciously working with them, randomly chose 2 essences to begin working with. And I was like, these are random, but oh, well, I'll just take them anyway. They were like so powerful. So good. And I feel like, there's so many people that have had those exact experiences of feeling this like pull towards flower essences and this medicine and kind of brushing it off somewhat or being a bit blasé about it, and then trying that first essence and just being like their life completely shifting, right? And it just shows you just how powerful they are. And I love how you said nothing changes, but everything changes. And I was just having a conversation like with a friend yesterday. We both had the same thought come up for us yesterday of flower essences make everything so much harder, but they also make everything so much easier. Like they're just like such a contradiction, like they bring up so much stuff consistently, but it just makes life so much better and so much more enjoyable and so much more, like the ability to just sit in life and be at peace with whatever chaos is going on is just like so much greater. It's so funny reflecting on that. Yeah.
It's so true. And I feel like it's just like the perfect encapsulation of like the spiritual path in general, where you're like, wow, this is so much harder, but also a million times better. And you're like, I'm here for it. Like, sure. Like I'll keep having it be hard if it means that like I am more and more alive, you know? And I think like that's sort of like at the heart of the spiritual quest, you know, is choosing aliveness, you know, even choosing aliveness, even over choosing like happiness, you know, that it's like, of course we all want to be happy. And I think aliveness makes us happy, but I think we so often navigate our days of like, well, what would make me happy? And that just feels like this cul-de-sac, right? Or this place we can never attain versus like, what will make me feel alive, you know? And I feel like, yeah, that's so much of at the heart of the spiritual journey.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so you obviously just shared your story with Star of Bethlehem. I wanted to know if there have been any other specific flower essences that have been really influential in your journey. I'm sure there's so many, but if there's any experiences in particular that sort of jump out to you that you'd like to share.
Yeah, my first experience making a flower essence was really powerful. So yeah, not so long after I started taking flower essences, I was like, okay, I want to make my own flower essence. And I was like, okay, wait, let me look up the instructions. And I was like, really? There was like, I think at the time there was one article online about it. And I was like, really? That's what you do? Okay. And it was what was so fascinating about it was I decided to make a flower essence from gentian because I had met gentian in herbal school and I knew that it was one of the Bach flower remedies. So I was already like familiar with it. So I was like, okay, like we're going to make a gentian flower essence. And so I did, and I was like perfectly happy with it. But I was like, it felt a little like I was kind of just like, I don't know, like I didn't fully trust myself, you know, because I was like, okay, I'm going to make an essence of this thing that people have already talked about and that like, then I'll know how to use it. And I made the essence. And then a couple days later, I went with some friends to the beach, and it's like a 6 or 7 hour drive from here. And I had been having these really profound experiences with passion flower. So like the day that I left for the beach, you know, I was sitting in the garden. I was sitting actually in herbal school in my class, and we were learning about passion flower. And I had been so drawn to this plant. I was so excited to like learn the materia medica. And as I'm sitting there, literally someone taps this passion flower and a bee that was sleeping inside the flower falls out and onto my arm and stings me. And I remember being like, whoa, okay, that's some sort of message. And so I had this welt on my arm, you know, driving to the beach that day. And we're only there for a couple days. The welt's still there. Like the day before I leave, I'm like fondling this welt on my arm and just being like, I don't know, something's important about this. And all of a sudden I just get this like flash of insight. I'm like, there's passion flower here. And it was almost like this like homing beacon in my arm. And it just like led me around this like abandoned lot, basically, to this pile of rubble. And there, growing on top of this pile of rubble, was this cascading passion flower vine. And I just remember being so blown away by that. Like, I remember being like, whoa, that plant literally talked to me, like literally called me in. And even though I like had just learned a few days ago, the whole materia medica of this plant, like there was something else. There was another reason why it was calling me. And I harvested some, I asked permission, I harvested some. And then on the drive back home to my house, which is, you know, as I mentioned, a significant drive, I had this huge, big emotional experience. And I was transitioning at that time out of a 5-year relationship. And it was an extremely hard transition. It was a really difficult decision. Like nothing about it was easy. There was like health issues involved and, stepping out of caretaking. And I just remember thinking like the passion flower is doing this. And I get home. So this story is going somewhere, but I get home and I'm like, you know, in that days when you just move through something really profound, you're kind of in this altered state and you're just like being guided. You're like, I know what I'm doing. I went to my apothecary. I opened up the cabinet. I grabbed what I thought was this bottle of alcohol because I was like, okay, I'm going to make a passion flower tincture because my brain was still in this place of like, like we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make the tincture because that's what I learned in herbal school. And I chop it all up and I pour this alcohol over it. And only once I seal it and put it back in my apothecary do I realize I used the mother essence of gentian to make this tincture. And I realized I was like, oh my God, like this whole time, passion flower was like, no, like you're meant to be interacting with me from this like energetic vibrational place. And if you won't make a flower essence, I will make you make one.
Yes.
So it was just like, it was so funny. And also just such like an example of me of like, to me of like, okay, yeah. So, especially you look online, there's like, these are the ways you make a flower essence, and I generally follow those guidelines. But what's so much more important than following some prescription of how to make a flower essence or take a flower essence is to like follow the spirit as it moves through you. And so even though that ended up being basically like gentian flower essence with passion flower, vine and flower inside of it, to me, like the energetic of it was this like potent, creative elixir that was more flower essence than it was tincture. And that's how I used it. I used it in drop dosages for like basically those two things. For me, I realized like passion flower, the way it spoke to me was so much about like really following the sort of like intricate mandala of your own desires and your own passions in life and being willing to leave behind, to like literally sacrifice things in your life so that you can really follow this destiny. And then, the gentian sort of came in to like support you on the journey of like, all is not lost, like you might feel discouraged right now, it might feel really hard. But like, I'm here to show you that like, there's positivity and there's hope on the other side of this passage. So, yeah, that was like, that whole experience blew my mind and also just like opened my mind in so many ways to what flower essences could actually be and how they might call us to work with them.
A quick note, if you are a creative, an entrepreneur, or someone with a deep passion or vision that you would like to expand into, if you know your potential and are desiring to transmute your fears into fuel for fulfilling it, if you want to learn more about yourself so that your relationships can feel expansive and easeful, and if this episode is stirring something within you, I want to share with you that I offer one-to-one mentoring packages where we will explore flower essences and using them to harness and harmonize your vision and creativity. Drawing upon all I have navigated and learned from working in the creative industries for a decade to creating deep relationships with the flowers, alchemizing my own fears, blind spots, and roadblocks, I have curated these 3-month packages to offer you deep healing, growth, and tangible resources to tap into your personal and creative evolution. Again, if this is stirring something within you that is calling to be tapped into, you can book a connection call or sign up for the Beauty Way packages via the link in the show notes or by heading to hekahealing.com.au/thebeautyway. I look forward to sharing the flower medicine with you. That's so beautiful. And I've had, there is something about doing this work and like understanding just what you're saying of like when the spirit of a flower or a plant is calling you to work with it and, not allowing, the rules or the distrust of your own sort of guidance to sway you from letting that unfold exactly how it's meant to, because there's no rules in nature, so it's like just allowing the spirit of that flower, of that plant to guide you in what is meant to unfold and trusting that that's going to be for the highest good, and just to touch on that quickly, so interesting. The very first flower essence that I made and communicated with was passion flower.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Wow.
So, and I had, for me, it was a very similar message about like leading with love, and almost similar to the old growth tree archetype, you know, this connecting of the heavens and the earth, and being that bridge, allowing, you know, being the leaders of, you know, the light workers, right? So that's, I just love that so much.
That is amazing.
So good, so good. Thank you for sharing that story. I love it. And I love hearing like all of the intricate little details of like just how we're guided, like, you know, the little sparks and insights, and like, hang on, like, what's going on here? And that's, yeah, like when you start to work with the essences and with the flowers, it's like that increases so much, like in your everyday. And it's almost like you're playing this like this amazing game with life of like, where are the dots connecting here? You know, show me something magical, like in each moment. So beautiful.
Absolutely. Yes, I love that. The magical game of connect the dots. It's like then you're in on the game all of a sudden and you're like, oh, I get to play. It's not just happening around me. I get to play.
Absolutely. And I guess that comes back to, you know, what you were touching on before of like, you know, are you being alive in this moment, you know? And I think if we're like invested in playing the game of life, we are being alive, you know? If we're choosing to like play it in each moment, it's only when we're like disconnected from it that we're not here, we're not doing it. So yeah. So speaking of plant communication, could you share, I guess, a bit how you guide others in discerning their kind of unique intuitive abilities? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it is really important to understand that like everybody receives things in different ways. And, you know, one way of understanding that is through the clairs, which people have probably heard of before, you know, like clairvoyant means you see things. And that's like one of the most common ones that people are like, I don't know. I don't see anything. I don't, you know, like it's not coming to me. And like, okay, well, you might be different, right? So there's, you know, clairaudient. Maybe you hear things. Maybe you actually hear a plant speaking to you, but maybe you also just like hear a song comes into your head and you're like, oh, that's telling me something about this. A lot of people I work with are clairsentient. I think that this is very common. I work a lot with sensitives and empaths, which I think we're all drawn to things like flower essences. So it just makes sense, you know? And a lot of sensitives and empaths are clairsentient, which means you know things because you feel them. Like you just have emotions move through you and you just have a feeling sense of it. And so trusting your feeling sense. There's a lot of claircognizance that also come into my field. And that just means that you know things because all of a sudden you just have like a psychic download and you're like, this is for this, you know? And so like there's all these different ways in which you might be receiving information. And so really your job is to just try to clear away what is blocking you from receiving because you're already receiving all the time. And to me, the thing that I see that is blocking people most of the time is self-doubt. It's like we do not trust ourselves. We question what comes in. And that creates sort of this like static, right? And that's like really normal too. I just want to normalize that, especially, you know, those of us who grew up in families and cultures where it was like not acceptable, you know, to be like, this plant just talked to me. It's like we had to do so much gating when we were younger that like it's going to take some time, right? To like open up these gates. We're like rewriting a whole culture by doing this. So like it's totally okay and really normal to feel like, oh, like there's this static in the way of me really trusting my intuition or hearing my intuition. But like the easiest way to unblock that is just to start taking leaps. So, you know, and I'm not talking about like taking a leap of like quitting your job and moving across the country, but maybe that is the leap you need to take. But I just mean even the small leaps of like, I just feel like I'm supposed to like, you know, not eat this breakfast I normally eat every morning and eat something different. okay, let's try that. Or like, I'm going to take a different way going to work today than I normally do. Or like, I just have this hunch that I need to, whatever it is, go to this bookstore that I've never been to before. Like, the more you follow those little hunches, the more you will see that they are leading you. And the more you'll then be able to refine, like, oh, this is how I receive information, and this is how it feels when I receive it. And, that's something that this is a question I get like over and over and over again from my students is like, how do I know that it's intuition and not my mind? Or like, how do I know that it's like this message is coming from the plant versus like I'm manufacturing it? And really what it comes down to is, because you can feel the way it lands in your system. If a message or a piece of guidance comes in with any kind of judgment, fear, worry, or anxiety, then that's coming from your beautiful little brain. If on the other hand, the message, even if it's dramatic or even if it's hard, comes in with a sense of neutrality, non-judgmentalness, compassion, curiosity, then those are the messages that we know are coming from this intuitive place or coming from this place that is beyond just like, our brain and the way our brain is trying to protect ourselves. And so I look for that, and what I often say is if you are having a hard time like receiving that and you're like trying and trying and trying and you're like, I just keep getting, these anxious messages or like, I just keep like trying to make a decision maybe even and it's not coming, then you have to stop trying. And that sounds so counterintuitive, but what I often find is that people are overwhelmed in their life. All of us are overwhelmed. Like all of us are moving through cycles of overwhelm all the time because of the world that we live in and the time that we live in. And so like when things feel so fuzzy that you cannot make heads or tails of anything, like just take as much off your plate as you can. Stop for a day, for a week, like just let it go. And it's this bizarre thing, but like sometimes the harder we try, the further it is in the distance, like a mirage in the desert. And then when we just let go and we let go of like being so attached, to the results of like, if I don't get this message, then that means something bad about me or is wrong with me, right? If we just like let it go and approach it more like a kid approaches things where there's like play and curiosity. And then also like now my body's hungry and I need to go eat something and rest. Like the more we just make that space to receive, the more and more will come in.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's something that I've found and really implemented and, share with a lot of people that I speak with is it's about creating that space, because if we're like, if it's taken up with us just like, going over and over our same thoughts or like grasping for other information, there's actually no space for that message to come through. So, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to ask you about the decoding of dreams that you do. I am a very intense dreamer. I have some really, like all of my dreams every night are very, very wild and adventurous and full. I'm often very tired actually afterwards. I want to know a little bit about your experience with this, and you've done a lot of research into the symbolism and just what comes up. So could you share a little bit about dream decoding with us?
I've always been a really strong dreamer too. And so they always like really spoke to me, and I've had like some really powerful, like life altering dreams in my life, including, dreams of meeting spirit guides, dreams of meeting with people who've passed on, who've asked me to, give certain messages to family members or help people in certain ways. And so I always knew that there was more to dreams than just the random firing of our minds. And what's really funny is actually my dad at one point growing up was like the co-author of a dream dictionary. So it's like, he's also a psychologist.
Yeah.
he came at it from more of like a, like a Jungian, like archetypical lens. But so it was like always in my field in some ways of like dreams are important. But like it really wasn't until I kind of went through these chronic health experiences that opened me up to like the numinous and the unseen world that I really realized, oh, dreams are not even just a psychological phenomenon. Dreams are like a remembrance of being in a non-physical world, which is really our home, right? So we like go home every night and we go to sleep and then we come back. This is like why we need sleep. Like our body needs a certain amount of rest, but it's really like our psyche and our spirit needs time away. Like we need time away, So I ended up finding the work of Robert Moss and studying with him for several years. And yeah, if anyone is sort of like interested as I'm speaking about this idea of dreams being remembrances of non-physical reality, his work he's a scholar and basically like a way shower between the realms. And he has a really interesting story of how he got into like really deeply working with dreams. But his whole philosophy is that, dreams are sort of like a natural gateway into the other world. And we all have the ability to work with our dreams to kind of like go on this shaman's journey in our own life to understand, what is being asked of us, what is coming in for us. And so from my experience, there is like this archetypical realm, right? Where certain things tend to hold certain meanings in the collective unconscious. But at the end of the day, dreams are packaged metaphors that your own wider knowing has gifted to you. And so only you truly know at the end of the day, like what your dream meant. Which is why, I love Robert Moss has this process called the lightning dream work technique, where you go through a series of questions, and normally you'd go through it with other people. And at some point, sort of after you're done telling the story of your dream, these other people in the circle will say, well, if it was my dream, da, 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 because all we can really report on is what it would mean to us if it was our dream. Right. And so then the dreamer then takes all that information and is like, well, what sits with me, what resonates with me, because you are the interpreter of your own dream. And, for example, it's like fire might mean something really different to me than it means to someone who, had their house burned down, like as someone who's never experienced that kind of tragedy with fire is like a symbol of, like power, but also comfort, warmth, so if a fire comes up in my dreams, like it might mean something different than somebody else. So like it really is so much a training. And the more you pay attention to your dreams, the more it becomes a training in understanding sort of the dictionary of symbols that your own wider self and your guides are using to communicate with you, not just through your dreams, but in your daytime. And so it becomes a very powerful thing then to start decoding your dreams, because you're like, oh, I know what that person means when they show up in my dreams, or I know what that symbol means because I've worked with it before. And the more you work with your dreams, the more you wake up to the reality that we're in this big, beautiful dream together for a period of time, called like our lives and called this time of being in our bodies. And one day we wake up, right? And so in this way, it's like when we work with our dreams, we're remembering the truth of who we are in this wider sense. And we are like remembering our power as dreamers to like co-create a different kind of world. And that's really what dreams are guiding us to do. They're guiding us to help us understand and unlock our potential so that we can really like be a part of the co-creation of this beautiful dream we're all part of.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And dreams are such a huge part of working with flower essences as well. And, it's a lot of the feedback I get from people who may have not ever worked with them before. That's kind of the thing that they start to see shifting the most, getting these dreams present that are just so unusual to them and so full on or, wild or just so memorable to them. And so it's like, I feel like it is such important kind of work to start beginning to get to know your dreams and what they are trying to show you. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I've found too, like the more I went down the plant path, the more I would then start dreaming about plants, or I would have, guides come to me in my dreams and tell me to take certain flower essences. And so, it just gets more delightful, really, because it's just more sources of wisdom and guidance and fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Well, I just have one last question for you today, Asia, and that is, if you could share one thing that you believe the plant world and nature would like the collective to know right now, what would that be?
This is a message that has come to me over and over and over again over the years. I mean, it literally is the message that drove me to write a book. And I think it's something that especially sensitives and empaths really, really need to hear, which is this concept that like self-gentleness and self-compassion, like that is the thing that will help you unlock your gifts. Like the plants want us to be so much more gentle on ourselves than we are. And so many of us are just so profoundly hard on ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. And then within that hardship, right, we're like blocked from our own potential, from our own inspiration, from our own creativity. And so, over and over again, the earth has told me, the plants have told me, like self-compassion is a force of ecological healing. So many of us want to be of service in this world. Like it's a burning drive inside of us. We're like, I'm here for a reason. I know that I'm here for a reason. Like I want to be a part of whatever this turning is, of whatever this time of transformation is. Like, and it can be a real source of pain to feel like we're not, or to feel like the problems are too big, like there's nothing we could do to help. And yet the plants say over and over again, like you embarking upon this journey of self-acceptance and self-gentleness, like that is the thing that unlocks this next era on the planet. And it really is that simple. If all of us truly deeply accepted ourselves, this world would be radically different. And it starts with those of us who are sensitive, those of us who are already on the path, those of us who doubt what we have to give, who think often that it's selfish to even like focus on ourselves or our own growth, right? Like this is like the front line. This is where it starts. And so the more you can lean into any moments of self-gentleness and self-compassion, the more you are opening up a huge stream of potential on this planet for all of our healing.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you so much for all you have shared with us today, all of your wisdom. And it's just so beautiful to talk to you. And I know that everyone's going to love tuning into this one. If there is anything you would like to share with the audience or where they can find you, go for it.
Yeah. You can find me at my name, Asia Suler. That's my website, asiasuler.com. I'm also on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook under my name and regularly share in all of those places. If you wanted to take that archetypes quiz, that is on my website and it'll be, right there at the top when you go to visit. I'm always so curious to hear from people who take it. Like, what archetype did you get? Like, how did it resonate with you? Like, that has just been such a cool experience. We've had like over 100,000 people now take the quiz. Yeah, it's so cool. And I love seeing like the distribution of like the people who take the quiz. Like, it's really fascinating and it's been amazing. And and I would just love to, connect with anyone who is like resonating with, the ecosystem of, what I'm sitting at the center at, if that is resonating with anyone. Like, I just is such a special thing to have these moments of connecting with people like yourself, Abby, and like having these like cross pollinations where we really all get to see each other and like see each other's work and start to connect and create these networks. So I'm really grateful for this time and this space together, and grateful to you for this work you're doing in this world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I will be back next week. Have a good day.